All right. For today, we'll be settling in and discussing our ground rules. They haven't changed a lot since last time, but since it has been a while since we've met, we would like to go over those again. We're going to go over the community engagement results from our engagement period in April, as well as the VCU equity assessment. And then we're going to go into prioritization. And that is more so related to what is actually going to get us to our 2030 goals. And then we're going to wrap up and go to our next steps. Our objectives for today is to understand the community's feedback on our draft strategies and how this feedback informs our next steps. We want to be able to agree on a prioritization scheme for the strategies to see which ones will rise to the top. So which ones are going to be elevated. So we'll plan to decide on that stuff today. Moving on to our ground rules, we want to make sure we're being respectful, that we're present during this meeting, that everyone participates, but no one dominates conversations. We want to be additive and not repetitive. Aim for consensus. So if it's something that you can live with, we can move on. Be open to new ideas. If you're going to bring a problem to the table, please also bring a solution. We want to also separate the people from the problem. Speak from for yourself and from your own experience, and not for a collective group. Rule of thumb. Is no longer Zoom, but we do still have reactions when it comes to Microsoft Teams that you can utilize. And we're going to always continue to do Elmo, which is enough. Let's move on, and we're going to make space. Are there any additional rules that we feel are going to be necessary? If not, I am going to articulate this one that's not quite up here, but it's something that we have used in the past, the 7-second rule. If it is silent for 7 seconds, we are going to move on to the next thing. With that being said, Dawn, back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Kyla. So in terms of where we are in the process, you've all seen this colorful timeline. We are steadily making our way across it. So we're in the middle circle of plan development. We've done our roundtable and capacity building, developed and refined the strategies is where we are now. And then after today, we'll be moving into the implementation framework and metrics. So progress is being made, and it's lovely to see that star moving its way along. Again, it's been a while, and we have a few new folks watching, so I want to reorient you to our draft structure. The goals, that's, what's the purpose of what we're doing? The vision is, what does the ideal future look like when this RVAgreen 20 is implemented? Let me see if I can mute that. Okay. The community priorities are, what cross-cutting public values do we want to center in our plan? The pathways, of which this is the environment pathway, those are the leverage points that will lead us towards realizing and operationalizing the goals and community priorities. The objectives that you all developed for your pathway are the long-term aims that we want to accomplish. And then the strategies are those SMARTY actions that will lead us toward our objectives. They are SMART, we've heard that before, that acronym, but then IE are inclusive and equitable. And then the implementation plans, what we're starting to move into next. How are we going to implement, measure progress, and ensure accountability in this plan? So today, we're going to be working on, we're going to report back on community engagement and feedback, sharing the results of the 10 and 30-minute surveys, and then the direct responses in the Conveyo document to our draft vision, objectives, and strategies. And then we'll go into prioritization. And so that is, what values do we want reflected in our plan? That's the selection of the objectives and strategies, and then what strategies can we focus in on that'll really help us achieve our 2030 goals. And so The reason, and then coming up next is going to be indicators and metrics. And that's when we're going to dive into the strategies that we've selected to move forward with. So be thinking about that, this list that we come up with today, that's what we're going to be spending a lot of time on. And we all want to make sure that we have the capacity, tools, resources to be successful. And then after our June 14 meeting, when we're talking about the shared understanding of what's achievable, what success looks like for each strategy, what are the indicators that we'll use to measure the success of our objectives. Then after that, in July and beginning of August, we'll move into implementation and accountability. And that is, how will we equitably implement the plan? How will we ensure accountability and transparency? So that's the timeline for the summer. But first, so I'm going to go ahead and launch into the community engagement results. We had a very exciting community engagement period and shared the work that's been developed in these working groups with as many Richmonders as we could reach. And we had several avenues. We got responses from almost 500 individuals, and they gave us responses to our work, and that's what we'll be kind of sharing with you today. Each of the avenues that we went down generated a number of tools that we're going to share with you next, and then each of these tools will be used as resources for further plan development in the coming months. So we're going to start to get into the weeds, and there are lots of tools we're going to show you that we're working with. And if at any point you have questions, please just speak up. We're a small enough group that we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. All right, so next I'm going to pass it back to Kyla to give you an overview of who we engaged with.
So we, as Dawn said, we reached out, or actually reached a little less than 495 individuals were responded within the community engagement period, 74 of which were from our paper surveys. Our 10-minute surveys, we had 199 responses. Our 30-minute survey had 192, and our Conveo had 30 responses. What we wanted to do throughout the process is hold ourselves accountable and be transparent with the community and our stakeholders about who we are engaging. When we said at the beginning of the process that we wanted to have an equitable process, we understood that that could be challenging. But in order to hold ourselves accountable in that process, we decided to map out the various neighborhoods that we receive responses from. And we did this, on a weekly basis. And if you followed our newsletter, you probably saw how it started to grow. The responses started to grow and started to expand across the city when you're allowing your partners to see, that their neighborhood may not be interacting with this process. It gives that extra incentive to get them to send the message out to additional people. But as you can see, like, there are certain neighborhoods that do engage more than others. And so we know that this is going to be an iterative process, and it's going to present some challenges that we will have to overcome. But, I don't think that the Sustainability Office is one that steps back from a challenge. So we're looking forward to, in our next engagement period, seeing a lot more of that dark blue response in some of our underserved neighborhoods that are what is considered BIPOC communities and low-income communities. So with that being said, Dawn, it's back to you.
Thanks, Kyla. Thanks for all your work on mapping that. As she said, the surveys were all geocoded for where they were coming from. And so we were, as far as we know, this is the first time that the city has ever done this during an engagement period ongoing. And so she was able to track week to week and present these maps so that we could, make sure we were really targeting the community. So I want to thank all of you for everything you did to share the newsletter and share the surveys and help facilitate the outreach. So any questions on that before we move on? Okay, so now let's get into the specific feedback relevant to this working group. As you can see from this next slide, we offered a 30-minute survey, and it asked which of these are the strategy buckets, which of these are most important to help you achieve your vision for a climate neutral and climate resilient Richmond by 2030. And they could, I don't know how many of you saw this, but that was the 30-minute survey, and they would slide a bar from not helpful, helpful to very helpful. And so of those 51 strategy buckets, these were the top 13. And as you can see, a lot of people care about trees, thanks to Jeremy Hoffman. A lot of people care about, air quality. So these are the things that got a lot of community support. And we then used that in our prioritization matrix so that we are continuing to focus on the areas that are most important to Richmonders. So how did the environment strategies rank in particular? Well, you can see where they fell. Again, the green space and trees were at the top. Planning and operations related to public outdoor spaces, urban agriculture, and air quality were all at the very top. Of course, engagement is important, and partnerships was actually at the bottom. So just to kind of give you an eye on where these all fell, the 68 was the lowest number of responses, 88 being the highest. And so these were where your strategy buckets kind of fell in between. So just to remind you of what the PDF document looked like. Hopefully you were able to see this Conveyo document out there that was interactive, where we were gathering all of the comments. But we took each strategy, and they had an associated greenhouse gas impact, low, medium, and high, depending on how many bars were filled in. The potential climate resilience impact, all four of those, heat and storms and flooding and community resilience, they got shaded in based on kind of the magnitude of relevance of that strategy. And then the potential community priorities impacts, those were shaded in as well. So we got so there are 188 strategies altogether, and on this interactive document, and we received almost 200 comments on these strategies. So we got a lot of feedback, a lot of input to dig through. And so now I'm going to kind of move forward on what we're doing with this feedback. So the first thing we did was read through all the strategies and all the comments and questions rather, and then came up with the response or action so that we could be fully transparent. Staff reviewed all of this and then responded to it in a shared document that is accessible through the website, or will be very soon. And on the right, this is just a snippet of some of the environment responses, comments and responses. So you can see where some of them are being carried forward to discuss during implementation if that strategy kind of makes it through to the next level, or we're thanking them for pointing us in that direction, or in some cases they might have a comment and it's already addressed in another portion of the plan. So we spell that out. So this is kind of our vehicle for communicating back to the people who took their time to address our strategies. So then internally, we've taken it all and created a monster spreadsheet and really looked at, okay, where can we use this feedback? Is it have something related to a milestone or an indicator, Are we going to be pulling it into the implementation discussions? Does it have to do with financing? Did it garner community support? Are people loving that one strategy? If so, we want to keep track of that. Are they recommending a new strategy? Is it related to an existing strategy elsewhere? Are we potentially revising the strategy language based on that feedback, or should we consider it? And is it just an innovative new concept? So we've gone through all of them and captured all of this information so that we have it as a resource moving forward. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anything in the notes. Okay, then next, we are always doing a self-check. And we wanted to take a pause and get some feedback on our own processes as it relates to equity. So we're all on a learning journey together. We had an opportunity to meet up with a VCU grads class on sustainable community development, and they conducted an assessment of our equity framework by comparing best practices and feedback from our racial equity and environmental justice roundtable, and asked them about their experience so far and what they thought about the process. And then we shared their findings with the roundtable, and now we're sharing those takeaways with you so that we can continue to integrate lessons learned. So, these are just a handful of the recommendations. It's a very long report with a lot of great feedback that we're going to continue to integrate. But they suggested diversify the working groups, incorporate youth engagement, and attend existing community meetings to retain newly established frontline community partnerships. They wanted to make sure that the working groups are taking advantage of the equity facilitators and trainers to expand capacity building beyond the roundtable members, consider quantifying the co-benefits in order to focus on the strategies that will have the greatest impact, and then define and publish a series of equity-related indicators to center the plan's implementation around continued equity. So even though we're going to be getting into the strategies and talking a little more technically, some of us are more familiar with that conversation. Please remember that equity is at the center of this process, and we really want to take these recommendations along with us throughout the whole process. Any questions on the VCU equity assessment? So for those of you who are interested in learning more or having discussions around this, feel free to follow up with any of us anytime, and we're always more than happy to meet with you and discuss these findings in depth. Okay, so with that, I'm going to move into prioritization. We're going to switch gears and focus specifically on the strategies. So why do we need to prioritize? Well, with 188 strategies across 5 pathways, we are not setting ourselves up for success. So we do have the goal of reaching a 45% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030, and then being carbon neutral and resilient and equitable Richmond by 2050. So we do need to keep those big picture, goals and milestones in mind. But we need to think about how can we successfully meet our goals given the timelines, available resources, and capacity. So we, as in all of us, all working groups, all staff, all dedicated community members who are partnering on this, all Richmonders who live here and are part of the solution, we as a whole are going to be, this is a community-owned plan that we want to make successful together. So we want to choose the strategies that will help us realize our values and achieve our objectives. We do want to be successful. We have a short time frame. We need to accomplish these strategies by 2030. We do have limited resources and limited staff, but anything that's not prioritized isn't being lost. It's going to be saved. Let's picture an appendix maybe with a checklist, because things will continue to go on. A lot of these strategies are already in the works. So we'll monitor them, we'll update them. We're just not going to own the facilitation of them. So keep that in mind as we move forward. So in terms of quantifying and figuring out how to prioritize, what we did is we took those ratings that I showed you before. Low, medium, and high were given 1, 3s, and 5s, and all the way through all of these criteria from, we divided it into 2. We have the equity impact, which is made up of the greenhouse gas and resilience pieces, and then we have the equity impact, which is made up of all the community priorities. So from there, we created impact scores and equity scores. On the impact side, we got some more criteria from GreenLink, our consultants. They have done so much modeling that they were able to help us come up with feasibility, cost effectiveness, and economic development scores. And you can read the definitions here of what those are. And then from the 30-minute survey, I went through that before, all those responses, we ranked them and then broke them up in percentiles and associated scores of 1 to 5 based on where they fell in the community's ranking of priorities. And then what we did, we had to determine whether or not each score should carry the same weight or be weighted differently according to its importance in determining priorities to reach the goal. So the roundtable reviewed the weights associated with each criteria and provided feedback to ensure that the prioritization scoring reflects our equity-centered values appropriately. So those are the weights on the right, and you can see how they were kind of weighted associated with each other. So I want to pause and see if anyone has any questions about this at this point while I take a sip. Okay, so from here, going to walk you through this fully transparent process. We just created a monster matrix, and what this is every strategy with an impact score and an equity score, and they were each given a percentile ranking. We added that up to get a combined score with a combined percentile ranking. And then we are focusing on everything that's in the 75th percentile and above for our starting place on determining this final list of strategies. So it's all sorted, all pathways together, all combined scoring, and then sorted from the 100 percentile down, and that's how we prioritized. Before I move on, again, I want to pause, see if you have any questions. Okay, so in the on the first slide, or potentially in the chat, I can't see it, but is a link to this matrix. So if you wanted to look a little more deeply at how we came up with this and how each strategy ranked in any of one of these areas, you can take a look at the Google sheet and see that. So then from there, we weren't done. We had to then go in and figure out what our methodology would be for combining all of these scores and ranks. So first we sorted by the impact score, and we, decided that it looked like a traditional climate action plan. Yes, it was the most impactful for greenhouse gases, and but it was not necessarily, resilience was not prioritized and equity was not centered. So then we sorted it by the equity score and thought, well, maybe that it's going to really make it equity centered. Well, that was not enough climate mitigation. It wasn't going to help. We weren't going to get at our goals. So then we said, well, maybe we'll just take the top 75th percentile for the impact and the equity, whichever ones meet both, whichever ones rise to the top on both lists, and that one was just too limiting. We didn't have a strong enough number of strategies to meet our goal. So the one that took the cake was number 4, sort by combined impact and equity. We added those 2 scores together and then sorted for the ones that made the cut. And that seemed to be just right. It isolated strategies in the top 75th percentile based on those combined scores, and it wasn't too limiting. So that was where we landed. So this is what it looks like across all of the pathways by objective. You can see that buildings and energy ended up with 14 strategies, community had 13, transportation 5, environment 11, and waste 4. So each working group is going to take a deeper look into their strategies. 4 strategies for waste. I'm sure they're going to say, well, we need to add some back in. Which ones will those be? Same with transportation. For example, they don't even have one. Objective 3 for transportation is about electrifying vehicles. Certainly we need to get some of those strategies back in here. So for environment, you can see we're going to take a deeper dive into our breakout activity, and you'll really look at which ones these are. But this is just an overview of how it landed. And I wanted to bring this graphic back up so that you could see, when we were trying to figure out our methodology, I kept seeing this. And I said, equity is at the middle, and we have climate action resilience, and it's this round robin. Which methodology is really going to reflect what we're going for from the very beginning? So that's why this is back up there. I feel like that's really where we landed. We just need to move forward with what our, what's the final list of strategies that we're going to move forward with. Okay. So this is just an example of the environment strategies, the top 3 that made the cut, and then the bottom 3 that probably shouldn't move forward. But that's up to you guys to discuss. So, sorry, for the neighborhood prioritization and urban heat islands and community gardening, obviously those are really strong strategies with a lot of community support and a lot of impact and equity. The ones that didn't quite make it through that lens were riparian development, reduced mowing, and regional collaboration. Now, this is just an example to show you that it doesn't mean that those 3 things aren't already happening. And maybe they're even being fostered by another city department or other organizations, other partnerships, other localities. It's just not going to be in this plan as a prioritized strategy. So these might be more like checklist items that we'll just keep track of on an annual basis. That's what we're here for, is to discuss how to move forward. So I'm gonna discuss or introduce the activity, and then we're gonna go into a 5-minute break, and then we're gonna come back into our breakout rooms. But excuse me. So what we're gonna do is go into the breakouts. There'll be 3 facilitators, and I'm trying to look at how many working group members we have here today. Kyla is gonna be looking at that and putting us into breakout rooms. There'll either be 2 or 3, depending on how many working group members there are. We do have several staff and interns who are here mostly to just observe and answer questions, assist where we can. But you guys in the working groups are the ones where we really want your feedback. So we want to get a nice mix of you in these breakout rooms to discuss and get your inputs. So the questions you'll be asking and answering: do the strategies that made the cut, that were in that 75th percentile, seem appropriate to you? Keep in mind, like I keep saying, our first goal is to reduce carbon emissions by 45% by 2030. So keep that in mind. And then on the activity, it's a Google Sheet. So for those of you who are able to get that link from the first slide on this deck, or in the chat if David was able to put it there, you're going to open this up on your own screen. I I will show you what that looks like in a minute. But on there, you have stars and X's where you can drag them up. You can type your responses. Kyla and David and I will be facilitating the breakout. So we're mostly there to, if you can't type in or you want to, we will do that for you, but we would love for you to type in your own responses and notes and feedback. And of course, discuss amongst yourselves. And so then also be thinking, are you comfortable with the number of strategies that are being prioritized? As we move forward with them, there's going to be a lot of work, accountability, what are the financing mechanisms, lots of details coming up. What are the indicators? So make sure that the number of strategies makes sense. Can we fully commit to ensuring the success of these strategies? And within the timeline of the 2030 goal, are these more longer term things? Might want to be revisited later, or are they a now strategy where we need to get on it now? So here's the link to the strategy. I think I can click on it. Yeah, this is what it looks like. The questions are at the top for you. And if it's in green, then they were above the 75th percentile. If they're in black, then they weren't. So at the bottom here are stars and X's, and you can click on it once and then drag it up if you really like a certain strategy and you think it's really important. Yes, I like it. If there are some down here that you think are really important and we need to reconsider moving it up into the ones that need to go up there, go ahead and put a star in. If it's, put an X on it, if you're like, what, we don't need to focus on this right now. We really want to get a sense of where your thoughts are on the stars and X's. And then over here with the shading, if it's shaded, it means that it was in the top 75th for impact or equity. And then, of course, the combined score is shaded. And then go ahead and type your notes over here if you want to put specific feedback to us. But what we're going to be doing is Kyla her group will be focusing on objective 1 for 15 minutes, and then she'll keep an eye on the clock and let you know when everyone will switch to objective 2. And then you'll walk through that one together, objective 3, 15 minutes, and then objective 4, 15 minutes. If you do finish up early, move on to the next one, but just be aware that the other breakout room might still be in there. So you might see some jumping around. If it gets too wonky, then maybe just take a break. But your facilitator can kind of guide you through that. And so then after the hour, we'll all come back together and wrap up. So any questions for me before we go into our 5-minute break and then breakout rooms?
This is Kyla real quick. To my understanding, we were rotating which objective we were discussing for every 15 minutes, but we're staying in the same room and with the same facilitator.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, so you're going to stay with Kyla.
Yes, the entire time. And so I don't think that I'll be able to inform you all. I'm going to ask that the facilitator of each group keep an eye on the clock for the 15. And I'll pull everybody back in after the hour. But if I give the notice for 15, like every 15 minutes, it may pull people back out of the group. And that may waste.
Sorry. We're on the same page. I probably said it incorrectly. I meant in your breakout room, you'll keep an eye on the clock. In mine, I'll keep an eye. In David's, yeah. And so each one of us will leave. I'm sorry, Kyla. I think I did say just you. I didn't mean that. So yeah, she will be sending you to breakouts, but then we'll be monitoring ourselves within our breakout rooms and moving through the objectives together. So you won't leave your breakout room till the very end. In teams, we'll see how it goes, but I think you have 2 options to leave the breakout room. One is leave the room and one is leave the meeting. So be careful which one you click at the end to come back into the main room. Any other points of clarification or questions on that?
I have a question. This is Mary. And I don't know if there's an answer. Is there any way that we can enlarge the print on the matrix? I'm having trouble reading it. And there's no way, well, I'll just punt. But if there is a way, that would be great.
Sure. Are you looking at this, what I'm showing on my screen
I'm
right
looking
now?
at what you're showing, and I tried the usual, the fingers thing, and that didn't work.
So up at the top where it says 100%,
Okay,
you could
but
click on
where-
125.
okay, on the menu bar,
Yep, it says 100%,
my problem
and
is
you click.
I can't read that either, honey. Can you point me to
Oh,
how many steps over is it on the menu bar? One,
so there are 2 arrows and then
It's the fifth
a
one
print-
over, I think.
the-
Yeah.
2, 3, 4. Okay, I see something, but I can't read it.
Dawn, would you like
what does
to
it say?
go ahead and go into our break, 5-minute break for everyone, and then we can
Yes,
help
that's a
Mary?
great idea. Thank you, Alicia. So we'll come back together at 1:45, and Mary, why don't you stay on and I'll try to help you make that
I'm
bigger.
sorry.
I'm sorry, 1:50. It's 1:44 now. We'll come back together at 1:50. So Mary, if you
Okay, let me get I've got a magnifier that will help me read.
okay.
Hey, Dawn, this is
Yes?
Alicia again. Just wanted to ask, it looks like there's a total of 10 working group members and there's 8 staff. So I don't know if you guys want to rethink whether to have 2 groups or I mean 3 or 2 groups.
Yeah, it's not, I believe it's 9 working group members, and there's a lot of interns and staff in the meeting. But did you want to do 2 breakout groups?
I think you're both right. Yeah, 2. So Kylie, you and I can facilitate. That'd be great. Thank you, Alicia.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is only actually create 1 breakout room, because me as the tech person can't actually get into one.
Yep, you're right. It's a 1 breakout. And then you could have maybe Maeve and Wendy with you, and I could take Alex and Alexis with me.
Excuse me. So to clarify, David's not going to do a breakout room.
Correct.
Okay.
Hi there, this is Mary.
Hi.
You got a second to help me magnify this?
Sure.
Okay.
Mary, it should be, I think it's the 5th item over from the left on the little menu bar.
Okay, and what does it say? I've got my magnifier.
Number, like a percentage number. First you'll have like a back arrow, a forward arrow, a printer, a little paint roller, and then the next one over is like a percentage number, and it has a little down arrow next to it.
I think I'm looking at a different row.
Okay. It's the one right above the spreadsheet. Right above the spreadsheet.
With the pictures. It has little pictures.
Okay. I see the 125. Okay, I think I see what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. So click on that little down arrow and you can change the percentage and make it bigger.
Well, click. That took me out of the, took me to another screen. Let me go back.
Okay.
No.
Do you have the Google Sheet open? Or are you looking at my screen?
I was looking at the matrix with the objective, with the strategies, and I just lost it when I hit that 125 thing.
You should be able to go in the chat on the in the Microsoft Teams chat, you should be able to go click. It's that last link that was posted in there. You can go click on that again and get back to
Okay,
it.
which is the chat? This is show conversation? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
meeting chat. Should I click on that?
It's the
link?
last one, that big long link of. With
Here
Google
is the
Docs.
activity.
Yep, that's the one.
Okay. Oh, hey, boy, you did it. Whatever you did.
Thank you, Wendy.
No problem.
Very good.
Okay, now do you
Lovely.
still need to go make it bigger? Do you still need
No,
to make it bigger?
it's big enough. I need to know how to be able to, because it's so big, I don't get the full screen. So I just know how to, I can see. I got it. I'm even at my age, which is.
No, you're doing great.
Yeah, no,
Thank
thank you so much.
I
You
applaud
have
you for.
so much
I'm gonna go get
valuable knowledge.
Go get a cup of coffee.
All right.
All right. Learned it.
So I have 4 working group members in each of the, well, that I know of working group members, because some people dialed in and they're unable to join the breakouts. So I left them inside the main room. And I have Maeve, and you said you wanted Maeve and Wendy with you, right? Okay, all right, that works.
It was just, yeah. Whoever lands wherever, it's fine. All right, well, it's 1:50, so I think we'll go ahead and go into our rooms, and I'll be in the breakout. The one of you who are staying with Kyla will stay where you are, and I'll see you in an hour. The ones who aren't with me.
Uh-oh.
All right, everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to not really a breakout room, but the main room. The cool crew, that's what we'll call ourselves. Jen, do you have your joke ready?
Oh, I was
I
going
do.
to say only if Jen had a good joke.
Yeah, it's a banger. Why did the can crusher quit his job? It was so depressing.
Say that again.
Why did
Soda.
the can crush so depressing?
I'm in my breakout room, Shannon.
Why did the can? I'll work on it. That clearly is way too daddy for you guys.
No, there was a little background noise. I couldn't hear you all the way. All right. So, does anybody need me to go over our the activity instructions? And does everyone have access to the document to make adjustments to it?
Yeah,
have
Kylie,
the doc.
this is Dave. I just want to make
Go
sure
ahead.
that there's only 2 groups, right? So I don't need to be disclosing.
Yes, there are only 2 groups. Don, well, because of the number of working group members that are here, we decided to split into 2, and I decided to snag you, David.
All right, well, I'll take it.
All right, so yes, does everyone have access? For those who are on the phone, if you don't have access and you would like to provide input, we can document that stuff for you. I would like to offer the opportunity for you all to be able to work in the style that is best suited for you. So if you would like to review this stuff for a couple minutes on your own and provide your feedback and then have a group discussion, we can definitely do that. If you want to just go ahead and have a discussion, we can do that as well. And I'll do my best to document all of your feedback. Is there a preference?
What objective are we starting on, or just one?
We're starting with objective 1, and
Okay.
we're going to do that for 15 minutes and then move on to objective 2. So I can put a timer on and let you all know when we're moving on to the next one as well, if we want to work silently. So I'm going to assume that everyone wants to work in their silos, and then I'll leave the last 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes for a discussion. So maybe jot your stuff down and then we can chat towards the end.
And I can't move the symbols at the bottom. Is that supposed to be something that we can do? Like the stars and checks and stuff like that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of challenging in Sheets. I usually have to click on it once to like select it, and then
Gotcha.
I can move it. But sometimes it is a little wonky.
Yeah, gotcha. Great, thanks.
Yep.
David, can you put the link back in for the document that we're working on?
Yeah, I'll grab that right now.
Is it called Here's the Activity? I keep
Yeah,
clicking on
it-
all these different links. Chat. Okay, thank you. And then I do have one other question in terms of the impact. Who did the impact scoring?
So the impact scoring was done as a combination with GreenLink, the consultants who do the modeling. They rated, I think, 4 of the 6 criteria, and then city staff added to that as well. And all that was reviewed by the roundtable to make sure it was reflective of the different values.
Okay.
Did I get that right, Kyla?
I do believe so.
I only ask that because I'm a little surprised that the urban agriculture program ranked as highly as it has in terms of impact. I can get the equity component of it, but the impact kind of surprised me.
So Parker, I'm looking at the scoring now, and it looks like a lot of what's driving that up is that it's feasible and cost effective to implement. And so since those scores are higher, and that's informing the impact score, that's looks like it's pushing the score up.
That's more
Yeah,
so the weights, right? How it's weighted.
Yeah, so the feasibility and cost effectiveness both score highly for community gardening and are weighted relatively heavily. So combined, that's pushing it up.
It also has a 3 with the greenhouse gas impact though, right? Like that's a pretty high score relative. I don't know if anything, I guess there's 1, 5, but 3 seems to be a pretty high score too. Is that, that's a great question. Am I interpreting this right? I was kind of confused about this too. Like the first row is like the weights, and then each thing, and then the rows associated with the strategies or what was developed by the scoring group, and then you multiplied those two together, and that's how you got the percentile impact score or something.
Yeah, so you're looking at like the spreadsheet that has all the numbers on it.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So most of the numbers in the rows are 1 through 5, and then they were multiplied by the weights across the top row, and that's their final score, and that's what the percentile is based off of.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I guess for me, what I'm curious about, and I'm wondering if any of you all are else struggling with this, objective 1, make sure all residents have the opportunity to engage with healthy natural resources, spaces, and biodiversity. Like a park master plan is going to sit on a shelf without some further implementation or activity. And the urban agriculture isn't necessarily related to natural resources. Not necessarily native in our community, and if they're all in hoop houses, well, then that has no benefit to anything on the biodiversity level. So I'm trying to understand where there's actually an action item for this that would support natural resources.
Do you think that any that didn't make the cut are appropriate for that? Because maybe it's not about nixing the 2 that did, but finding one to add.
I think that's a good approach. Thank you.
The next one down, that seems to fit into that category. The creating a program to introduce rich mirrors to kind of green spaces throughout the city.
That's more on the engagement, which would be kind of giving them a map or giving them some signage or acknowledgement of how they could engage. I'm looking at more
Maybe the thing on line 10, the public-private partnership.
Yeah. Because that would then be taking the park master plan, and this is where I run into problems with the city, is even in the Richmond 300, they didn't do anything to identify future parkland or future conservation areas of importance. And so without that in the city comp plan, we have to now basically find a way to do this.
Do you feel like that's something that goes into the, I guess it would be a strategy to like put in there to identify, the future stuff. But as far as the accountability of it, you feel like that's more so in the implementation of the strategy, or is that like something
Yeah.
that can be added to a already existing strategy as far as the language of taking future lands into consideration?
I think you mean adding it to the, well, I guess we have these strategy buckets. And I would include the partnership one as part of that implementation, which would be separate from the planning. And urban agriculture, it really does just sit out on its own. Did I answer your question?
I think so. I think so. If you all would like, we can move on to looking at objective 2. To keep things going.
Some people are already over here.
I think the group started on this one.
Oh.
Yeah. So, if there's something that you see, a comment that you see that you like, you could potentially even add a star to that. While we're here, Shelly, hi, welcome. She's a new member to our environment working group. I just wanted to make sure you had all of the materials and were able to review the documents that we're looking at currently. Okay, perfect. And when we get back into the main group, I think we're going to allow Fraser to introduce you.
So I think this, in my mind, this has a lot of the same issues that Parker kind of raised in the last one. Like, and people are addressing this in the notes. Like, devising plans is maybe less ambitious than it could be, and the implementation part of that is important to consider. Whether or not that exists as a different strategy or is implicit that that's part of the plan that it actually gets implemented as well. But there's a danger certainly if we just have if just devising a plan as the strategy that gets checked off and then that is a signal that there's an accomplishment where that's just a first step.
And I think my understanding of the next steps is that that's what we'll be discussing. So once we select the, whatever strategies we're really focused on, the next two meetings are going to do exactly that. Like say who is responsible for then creating and enforcing the plan, or who's going to be accountable for like taking this from an idea into practice. And so that'll be like those, I think, considerations will be really important in the next few steps as well. So we can put a little bit more like specifics to some of those questions.
I would like to encourage everyone, when it's at the end of the meeting, we will be providing the survey. All of the things that you're thinking about as far as the plan in itself and the implementation and who's responsible for what, we still want to hear those things from you all and capture that feedback so that it's at the top of our minds. So please add that information into the survey so we can always capture that as well.
David or Kyla, I am not savvy enough. Can someone make more stars to move around in objective 2? I tried.
Absolutely.
I really want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In terms of the consultants that help to score, how familiar are they with Virginia regulations and grant opportunities?
Well, they are based in Atlanta. I will say that. But they work with a number of cities. And I'm like 99% sure that they've researched some of that stuff. But for the most part, I feel like it was more generalized in their assessments. It was more,
Okay.
yeah.
And I only asked that question because I'm on objective 3 now for the flood prone
Okay.
land. And the way that Virginia implemented the regulatory greenhouse gas initiative, the RGGI, it's directing $40 million next year to something called the Community Flood Preparedness Fund, which precisely is designed to help localities to acquire flood-prone properties. And that's going to be recurring each and every year, but this first year is $40 million. And it seems to me that when it comes to implementation and funding, if you get a state grant that's going to pay for it, and it's going to be a recurring source of funding, that would be a pretty easy strategy. And I also say within the riparian development, the Virginia General Assembly last year also amended the code with regards to localities can adopt an ordinance where if there is development in the riparian management area, not the protection, but the RMA, that the locality can require an offset of tree canopy, and it would be funded for offset. So there are new regs and there's new funding sources for some of these, which I think that they have a better impact score, but they may have just scored low because they might not have thought that the funding was there.
Could you, if you haven't already, could you add some of that into the notes about those? Thank you.
I have.
I agree with you, Parker. I wonder about how it plays out because, like, I know that the community flood preparedness funds also can go towards projects. So I wonder how the plan could balance that for just buying flood-prone land versus fixing current flooding issues, and where the equity element comes into that.
Oh, it's designed to buy flood-prone land. We've provided a lot of comment on this. And there is in the manual a directive to prioritize environmental justice communities.
Right.
So,
right. I mean that the funds can also be used for projects. So how do we say pick land, not flood mitigation projects?
Or why not both?
Well, I guess I'm asking well, then you'd have the city going up against itself in multiple proposals, right?
Well, I think what you're asking maybe, Jen, is how do we value green infrastructure versus gray infrastructure?
I don't think so. I mean, like, how would we pretend that it's a green infrastructure project that we'd be asking for those funds for versus procuring land? I don't know what we'd say to people in Warwick that we wanted to put in a green infrastructure project in their neighborhood, or we want to buy this parcel to use as to prevent future flooding. Do you know what I mean? I just don't know how that I think it needs to be in this language somehow if we want it there.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was thinking of it as, is there multiple benefits if the land were to be acquired and it weren't just considered flood mitigation, right? Could it be used for parks or community gardens or some other component?
Yeah, so totally. I just think that if I was in a meeting, I think that there will be people who are struggling about procuring the land versus using the same funds to see a stream reconnection come into play.
Mhm.
Both of which offer community amenities, right?
Yeah. But so much of the waterways are privately owned in our city. That's where I think that could probably benefit by acquiring some of these um, these corridors.
Hey, Jen, can you remind me the green infrastructure master plan that eventually expands beyond those targeted three targeted watersheds?
It
Or not?
could if we had funding. But it does, so it currently looks at the three targets, so Gillies, Manchester Canal, Jaco, and I don't think that there is currently funding to look at parcels outside of those three, but the concept about the city departments working together and continuing to think about green infrastructure, even in different parts of the city, is in play. We'd need another funding boost to have the tool expanded to all public owned parcels in the city of Richmond.
Gotcha. Great. So to think about green infrastructure beyond those specific areas, we need something in addition. Thanks.
Yeah. Or it just wouldn't be part of the actual tool. We would be able to look at a parcel in the far west end to tell exactly how well it's going to rank up against others.
If we want, we can move on to objective 4, because I think we only have, well, no, we can stay up with 3 for a little while longer. But I think in the next 5 minutes, we can go ahead and move to objective 4.
Hi, I have a question as a new person that may seem silly. I'm looking at strategy 3 under the reduced mowing. Another concern about that would be how much does it matter that projects that you undertake look good? And the idea of planting something as a mass flower garden assumes that those things will take over and grow well. You know, so what happens when it doesn't grow the way you think, and does it matter if it doesn't look good?
As a quick question, are you on which objective are you under? Under objective 3?
Yeah. Yes, I believe that's
Objective
where I
3.
was. Yeah, it's at the
Okay,
bottom.
and
It's been X'd out by this one. Yeah, maybe that's a question I should just put in the comments.
okay.
I always put things in the comments, but Shelley, I think one part there is maybe that instead of a nix because thought, it can also be like do this, but lots of signage and like awareness building could help with that, right? That you tell people why it's going to look like that, not like I was playing around on 3.11 last night. There were lots of like, my neighbor has lots of flowers, but they're too tall.
Hello,
Hey Parker, how you doing?
I'm good.
So
Let me
kind
mute
of
myself.
thinking about how to prepare the community for that in some places, maybe.
Mhm. I feel like that's something similar to you remember Jonay, Jen? She was telling me
Anyone.
about I know I was over here like I want to make sure I get her name right. She was telling me how when they were planning the trees within the sidewalks doing the planters to prevent to reduce stormwater runoff in downtown area, whatever. But when they put the salt down for the winter time, it got into that. And so it just didn't function in the way that they wanted it to. And it's just like having to take into consideration those little details that you may not think like just, oh, well, this is a great idea, but you have to think about the other, how everything's intertwined and interconnected to ensure that it's actually going to be productive and not a waste of money. So I think that that's something that we definitely need to always consider is like in the holistic form, this sounds good, but what other things could impact it to have negative impact or for it not to look the way we want it to actually look.
Totally.
At this time, I would like everybody to look at objective 4. And then we can have, I guess, a final group discussion before we move back into the main room. Well, until everybody else comes into our main room.
Can we have more stars in objective 4, please?
Absolutely, I'm doing it now.
Thank you.
No one's asked for more X's yet, so I guess that's a good sign.
If you want, you can also just copy and paste the stars that are already there to get new ones too.
I tried that and I ruined a lot of things.
Oh, okay.
But that's just me and sheets.
It's tough with the spreadsheets, definitely.
Office of Sustainability folks, I am curious if you can, I might have missed this earlier. Can you tell us what happens to the not right now objectives? Are they still included in the plan? Are they sort of like a in the plan, but they're for later sort of thing? Or are they tabled until after 2030?
I think they're still in the plan as like appendix type stuff. But David, is that your understanding as well? And if
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah, so my understanding is nothing's getting lost. The ones that aren't prioritized for 2030 are, yeah, still included and like checked in on each year in case pieces are moving in other areas, but not like, I think, focused on. Whereas the ones that do end up prioritized are like where the effort's going to be focused.
Super. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So Kyla, everyone has returned back to the main room except for Mary. If you could close out that breakout room, that would launch her back over here. That would be really helpful.
Doing that right now.
Thank you.
There she is. I see her back.
All right, so I think we're all back in the main room now. Hopefully the first group with Kyla found that as interesting as we did in the other one, and I would love for you guys to share your findings with each other. This is just kind of a circle back wrap up, so please, the floor is yours.
Does anybody from our group want to give any of their feedback on the strategies that were prioritized thus far?
I think everyone's talked out.
I guess I would say one thing in general that we found was a lot of the prioritized strategies seems to be a lot of like plan development, and you know, a common thread we found was like not just writing new plans, but like thinking about the implementation, next steps of those is going to be really important.
Excellent. I mean, both groups saw the same thing. And Jeremy, you said it really well in ours, if you want to contribute to that. And, you know, what are your thoughts on that same topic?
Yeah, I think Todd used the exact same words basically that I did. It's like, you know, a plan that just asks for more plans doesn't really do anything. And we have an opportunity here to actually make like metricized steps towards achieving climate equity, and we should. And so by simply adding a word about implement, or, you know, something that suggests a metric that we can say, have we done anything with this, you know, could be enough to put it into that realm. But yeah, it's nice to see that the priorities that rose to the top are really fundamental to really achieving that stuff, but they're right now just framed as plans, not as actual real actions. So we're kind of at a good spot, I think, to reevaluate what those ones that came to the top truly mean as far as step taking.
So Jeremy, this is Parker. Can I take that a step further and ask you, you know, how the Biden administration has rolled out the America the Beautiful initiative, and the Convention on Biodiversity is going to be setting their 30 by 30 goals. Clearly, Richmond can't protect 30% of our land, but should we strive to have some metric? Is that what you're saying? That there needs to be some benchmark that we try to get to? And I know in the Richmond 300 plan, it calls for like maybe 100 acres of protected land. But when you talk to Chris Frelke, he says that we're at 6% and a city our size needs to be at 15%. So, you know, we've got the head of our Parks and Recreation saying one thing that isn't supported by our master plan. And here we have something that could reinforce what the head of Parks and Recreation is saying is the vision.
Precisely, Parker. I mean, I think that's what kind of comes next, right? Is setting the metrics for how we show we achieve the strategies. And so if we can set up in the verbiage of the strategies that there's like steps towards a metric, then we can make it clear how we're going to get to those things. So I think it's a combination of yes, it's a yes and thing, but we can't just rely on plan as the main word that we use here, in my opinion.
Excellent feedback. I really appreciate this. I think we're all in the same place. We're in a good place. So our next meeting together is going to be June 14th at 1, when we'll be talking about the indicators and impacts. And I think it's really interesting, this just what Jeremy was saying. We need to set up the metrics to explain how to get to these goals. That's exactly where we're going to be going next. So we have some work to do to kind of clean up these strategies, but I think we made a lot of headway today. So very grateful for all of your input there. So like I said, June 14th at 1, we'll be meeting up again. There is a feedback survey in the first slide. We'll also follow up with it in an email since we're having trouble getting this link to everyone. But I certainly want to hear your feedback on this. And I'm new to you, so please, would love to hear how to do this better next time. Brianne will be back in August, but between now and then, for the next 3 meetings, I will be working with Kyla to facilitate your working group. Other than that, general reflections, any updates, upcoming events, any other resources you'd like to share with the group, the floor is yours. And if not, then have a great day. Oh, I see Fraser, or someone has a hand up.
I just, I would like to take a quick minute, to say thank you. I will probably continue to join this group, but in a different capacity. I'd like to introduce the new executive director of Capital Trees, Shelley Barrick Parsons. She is literally 2 weeks in the seat and has lots of experience in nonprofits, came to us as the director of Children and Family Ministry at River Road Presbyterian, and he's jumped in with both feet, and just say welcome and thank you.
Welcome, Shelley. It's so nice to have you. And Fraser, thank you for all of your contributions to date, for sure. Please continue to join us.
Thank you, will do. Bye, everyone.
All right, bye, Fraser.
And I'll throw in a quick shout out for Rob Jones, even though he's not on today, one of your co-coordinators. I saw he just was awarded the 2021 Servant Leader Award by Leadership Metro Richmond Program. He was a member of the class of 2020. So.
Oh, wonderful.
Anyway.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I'll stay on for anyone who wants to ask me any questions. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And Kyla, you can stop recording.